Hello and welcome to this edition of EC3 HOSA Medical Moments. I'm Gina Ryan, Director of Hardin County Educational and Community Television, and today we're going to bring you the most up-to-date information that we have as a school district that was just hashed out in practically hours, a few hours ago, with Janae Sutton, who is our Director of Family Services and also Health. She does a lot of different things for our district, but right now, COVID duty is your prime duty. So bring us up to date.
Yes, thank you, Gina. I appreciate you having me here today. And as with we've learned in the past 2 years, things do change quickly based upon the current research, based upon what the CDC is telling us. And the CDC is our national governing authority, and then we have the Kentucky Department of Public Health that is working hand in hand with our Kentucky Department of Education, which governs our school system. So right before New Year's, so we were all the students and families were on winter break. Those of us that work 12 months, like you and I, we were in the office, and the CDC released new guidelines, COVID isolation and quarantine guidelines for the public. Those were then translated into COVID revised guidelines for K through 12 public schools and placed on the CDC website. So now you have the national guidelines that came out right before New Year's. Then our Kentucky Department of Public Health took those, reviewed those with the lens based on the numbers, the cases, what they were seeing happening specifically here within our state of Kentucky, because we want to do what's best and what's safest for our students and our staff here. They worked after they completed their protocol review and brought us up to speed by listing those revisions and so forth. They shared them with KDE, and then the superintendents, our Kentucky Department of Education Commissioner, everyone talked about it. So that all happened. The Kentucky Department of Health came out with theirs on Monday, January the 11th. So myself and our Healthy at Schools committee, which involves our superintendent, Ms. Morgan, some folks from our HR department, and so forth, we took those and we have come up with what is translated for Hardin County schools. So much like a lot of governing laws and so forth, you have your national, state, and then you're working with your local. Ours must be in compliance with the CDC and with Kentucky Department of Health, sometimes more restrictive, but it has to at least meet those standards. So that's kind of the timeline of how everything happened.
For those, some things have changed. So what's the important information that parents need to know?
Yes. The important things to know that some things have changed, some things have not. Let's start with the things that have not changed, because that's important to know that those things are still what's practices that are being followed. First of all, let's remember our definitions of isolation and quarantine. Sometimes those words get used interchangeably and confuse folks. Isolation is what an individual will do if they have tested positive. Quarantine is what an individual will do if they have been identified as a direct contact. Brings me to my next one. Direct contacts, the definition is the same. It's being closer than 6 feet if unmasked, like Ms. Ryan and myself, we are staying farther than 6 feet apart so that we would not be direct contacts of one another. If both parties are masked properly and consistently, the distance can be 3 feet. The time is still greater than 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. So those things have remained consistent and so forth. With the Kentucky Department new guidance that has come out based on CDC, the changes that are important for folks to know is that there's gone from a 10-day isolation if you're a positive case, or 10-day quarantine period if you are direct contact, down to 5 days. We're going to start first with isolation and a positive case. It has been reduced to a 5-day isolation period based upon day 0 being the onset of your symptoms, or or some people just get tested. They are asymptomatic, they have no symptoms, maybe they've been a direct contact, they might have a procedure that's going to be happening, a medical procedure, and required to test. They might be traveling and required to test. So then it would be day 0 would be their date of test if they have 0 symptoms. You're required to stay in isolation for 5 days. So until day 5 and day 6, you would be released only if, obviously day 6 if you have no symptoms the whole time. But if you had symptoms, your symptoms must be fully resolved, to include that your temperature has been gone for 24 hours or longer without fever-reducing medications. So that's on the isolation side of it. It's important to understand we've gone from 10-day to a day 5 isolation if your symptoms are fully resolved. What if they're not resolved? So you continue to self-monitor yourself. You're looking at your cough, you're looking at any type of congestion, as I stated earlier, fever, any type of gastro issues and stuff like that, that's been resolved for 24 hours or longer. Mm-hmm. So you might not return until day 7, 8. A full isolation would be through day 10. The caveat to that, very important for all school parents and staff to understand, is we are only allowed to do that as long as we are universal masking. Universal masking within Hardin County schools, that is something that has also not changed. Back in August, we consulted with Baptist Health Hardin as well as our health department, and we felt like an incidence rate of 50 or more would necessitate pulling back in the mask mandate. Currently, we are right at or over 200 for our COVID incident rate for Hardin County. So obviously we are under a mask mandate, so we're able to follow these new revisions because we are doing universal masking. If someone is not able to mask, whether there's an exemption or they cannot wear a close tight fitting mask for those 10 full days, then they would not be allowed to return to school or work in our public schools on that day 6 through 10. That would not be allowable. That takes care of isolation in cases. Mm-hmm. So the revision that has happened for our direct contacts, which involves even more folks, is that that quarantine period, if you have been identified as a school-related contact, and by school-related, we mean you were exposed and identified as a direct contact classroom, lunchroom, bus, or other, maybe in the courtyard or in the morning time, students arrive. If you're identified as a direct contact, as a parent or as a staff member, know that you will be notified of that potential exposure. But with universal masking, there is no quarantine required at this time through CDC, through Kentucky Department of Public Health, and approved by KDE. So we are following that. So if it's a school-related exposure where universal masking, that means the positive case and the direct contact were properly and consistently masked, there is no quarantine period that is mandated. However, if it is a household exposure, so that means you're living with those individuals and that's where you were exposed, the quarantine is still there. The option, though, again, just like isolation positive case, has gone from 10 down to 5 days, as long as you self-monitor and have no symptoms. Day 0, which is your last day of exposure, through day 5, there will be no need to quarantine. Day 0 through 5, there will be no need to have your quarantine past day 5. Day 6, you get to return to school, only with the condition that you wear your mask, properly fitting mask. Days 6 through 10, we're under a mask mandate, so that is taken care of. The other option is a modified quarantine, what our Department of Public Health, they refer to as a modified quarantine, which is test to stay. And folks have heard about that. So if as a household contact, you are comfortable with not doing an at-home quarantine day 0 through 5, you would prefer to do test to stay, which means you would report to our schools. We are still partnering with our wonderful agency, Cumberland Family Medical, who has been very crucial to the success of us getting through this pandemic. And they are there to do test to stay. If you're asymptomatic, our school nurse can test you. And you would test days 1 through 5. And then starting on day 6, you still monitor your symptoms through day 10. Wearing your mask, but you could be at school that time. So that's a parent choice. Or if it's a staff member that's been exposed, it's that staff member's choice for them if they want to do test to stay as opposed to staying in quarantine day 1 through 5.
Now, this information is available for parents on the website and community members, right?
Our HCS Public Relations Director, Mr. John Wright, has updated our website. If you go to our Hardin County Schools website on the home page and you look at the ribbon at the top, there lists COVID. It's HCS 2021-22 COVID-19 protocols. If you click on that, every bit of information that I've shared with you today, you will see located there. And if you're like me, I like to see it in written print. I can read it, digest it, and think about it. Additionally, under news and announcements, there's an icon there that you could click that would get you to the right spot. Another thing that our Public Relations Director, John Wright, is continuing to do is we monitor our positive cases within our district. If a school is notified by a staff member or a parent that their child is a positive case, that is entered into a secure portal, and those numbers, not those names, but those numbers are given to our HCS Public Relations Director, and he keeps that up to date. Important thing to notice is that if you have been a community member, a parent, a staff member that has been looking at, we call it our COVID dashboard, it's located under our quick links on our Hardin County School site, you'll notice that the numbers had a change. There from Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday. It's actually from Wednesday to Thursday is when we updated and started using our new protocols. Those went into place on Wednesday. And so you'll notice that the numbers changed significantly because we went from a 10-day isolation to a 5-day. So individuals were released quick and so forth. And we always, of course, encourage, you can do COVID drive-thrus and so forth like that, but it is really important that if you are symptomatic, that you get in touch with your primary care healthcare provider or with a facility that has a medical care provider there that can instruct you, guide you, follow your case. If those symptoms continue to worsen, that you definitely seek that care so that you can have that medical support and expertise.
So far with our school numbers, right now we're hitting high marks across the country, highest level ever. How do you feel about it in terms of our local district?
In regards to our local district, as far as numbers are concerned, when we came back on this past Monday after our 4-day long snow weekend and all the numbers were reported, we had upwards of 130 positive cases reported. That's the highest number ever in the past 2 years, which means the transmission is definitely up. Those numbers that were reported, household cases, as the week went on, we are seeing some of our test-to-stay students that were considered direct contacts within their household or with athletics where there was not masking involved. So they're doing, we are testing those kiddos that are no symptoms, but we're offering that they can get tested in our clinics to see, obviously, because they were unmasked when they were exposed, trying to get those individuals into isolation so transmission will not occur. So it was upwards of 130 yesterday. On Thursday, we had 90 positive cases, so the numbers are still higher than what they have been. What does that tell me? It tells me it's that this variant that is out there is definitely being transmitted much easier. That means hand washing, mask wearing, making sure that your close proximity with individuals stays much further than what you have been. It's important to know, a lot of folks will say, well, I have the Omicron variant or I have the Delta variant. What happens when you are COVID tested? You're told you're positive for COVID or not, and that's the end of it. Those samples of those are then sent off to our state level labs, and they test ever so many, and that's how they get the percentage of how many folks have Omicron, because those labs do additional testing to test for which variant it is. So that's something, just a little odd fact for folks to help understand.
It's still really important too that outside of the school setting, in the schools, we're doing everything we possibly can to keep people from getting infected,
Yes.
catching the virus. But we need some help out in the community too, though.
Yes, definitely. We do appreciate all of our families and so forth that are taking special care to, when you do have outings and stuff like that, that you try to maintain your distance, you masking. Of course, those individuals who have made that choice to vaccinate, we have definitely seen the infection, if they do end up testing positive for COVID, remaining asymptomatic totally or having symptoms that are so much more mild and so forth. So that is very important to consider.
In terms of testing and also wanted to know about getting the shots, the vaccinations and such. Do we know as a district, or can we report approximately how many of our staff members are vaccinated? Do we have that information?
Our HR department would have that. I don't have that percentage myself off the top of my head. I do know that anyone that is seeking one can share with your school nurse that you would like to get vaccinated. We have Pfizer, Moderna, as well as J&J. If you had the J&J, which Johnson & Johnson, Janssen, within 2 months, you should have received a booster in order to be considered fully vaccinated. That is an important specific detail to understand. And then your Pfizer and your Moderna, if you look at the CDC website, it has been updated to state if you had Pfizer or Moderna were fully vaccinated, dose 1 and dose 2 with those, that 5 months out, you should receive your booster in order to be considered fully vaccinated.
Since our last meeting together, I think the age has also, the age in order to take the vaccine has changed. Now, do we assist in that also?
Anyone ages 5 and up can receive the COVID vaccine through any of our schools or your primary care physician. You can also call Walgreens, Kroger. A lot of our different pharmacies offer those throughout our community. You have to set up an appointment, or I would always encourage you to call ahead to see if you need to set up an appointment.
It's been pretty positively received too.
Yes, it's our community has done a great job giving access. I know several communities that have run out of COVID tests for whatever reason. Again, kudos to our Baptist Health Hardin, that they have been extremely supportive with testing. Cumberland Family Medical has been outstanding, as well as our local pharmacies. Which is important to bring up. One of our final things that I have to share with you is Monday, on Martin Luther King Day, while our students and faculty will not be at schools because that is a holiday and our buildings are shut, as well as our central office is closed. Cumberland Family Medical is again showing up from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you're looking at John Hardin High School to the far left where you see tennis courts, look for the orange cones and the markings. From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., they will be administering COVID tests, which if you've developed symptoms over the weekend, you know as well as I do that it's very hard to get a test on Saturday or Sunday and get in. So with them offering that testing site is going to be a great resource. Know that they are only capable or able to do 200 tests. So it'll be the first 200 that are there.
Now, in addition to testing, are they doing vaccines that day too?
If you would want a vaccine, I do encourage you to call 844-435-0900. That is our Cumberland intake line to ask the receptionist and their booking staff there if they would have vaccines. To my understanding, it will be a COVID testing site. Obviously, everyone suits up and they have the PPE and the way they're dressed with their gowns and stuff for a certain. So I'm not sure about the vaccines that day.
Is there a location individuals can go to find out where these clinics and testing sites are available when they pop up and when available?
Baptist Health Hardin they have shared with us on their sites, but the Lincoln Trail District Health Department, which is also a great supporting partner through all this pandemic and being so kind and helpful with our schools and our businesses, they do have listed on their website. So the Lincoln Trail District Health Department, that's LTDHD, they keep an updated listing of all those COVID testing sites. The old Sears building at the town mall, many of us exactly where the town mall is, but there's a testing for PCR testing there that's only Monday through Fridays though, and they have different hours each day. But again, on the Lincoln Trail District Health Department site, they do have those listed. I
know that many individuals probably have differing views on COVID, its severity and the spread. I don't know of any person that hasn't been touched in some way with knowing of an individual that has passed due to COVID. And so for those at home that may think that it's all, once they get it, it's okay, you'll be fine. But we've seen that this is something it isn't going to go away anytime soon, but we do need to take the best precautions to not only keep ourselves, but our other loved ones and those staff members that are around us safe too.
And I think that's key, what you're saying, Gina, is that this is not just a me issue. We always want you to be taking care of your health and so forth, but also taking consideration the people that you're around, and you're not always aware of what health issues they may or may not have. But this is a community problem, and a pandemic is not just something that's happening in your house. This is worldwide. It's not just even nationwide and so forth. So it is definitely not just to think about the person in the mirror.
Well, thank you. Janae, anything else that you'd like to add that maybe I didn't get to today?
I think that's about it. I thank you for always having us on here. Super excited. I do work with a variety of programs, as Miss Gina just shared. Our Family Resource Youth Service Centers are working on an exciting wellness night at Pritchard Community. So be looking in your kids on the websites, on school websites, in your backpack in March for a huge wellness health night that will be offered at Pritchard Community Center. Thanks to all of our wonderful health and wellness partners throughout the community. Sponsored by the Family Resource Youth Service Centers.
Awesome. I want to, again, thank you for being here today. And also, I'd like to just acknowledge one of our dear friends recently passed away, Terry Bergen, and she was the Public Information Officer for the Lincoln Trail Health Department. And she'd been on this show numerous times since COVID has entered our lives. And her passing has definitely left a void and a hole. But she's one of those game changers, those individuals that made a difference, and the world is not as bright without her light. But we want to recognize her family and also her work family, because we know that all of you are suffering from that loss, and we just want to remember her for her professionalism, her love for the community, and constantly putting others before self. Thank you for joining us today.